Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Catherine Zach. This is the 40 portal. So we've reached the point in the year. It is the beginning of June in the Hudson Valley where I live, where I cannot be on a computer unless I am outside. So if you feel like you're hearing birds chirping or like a lawnmower in the background, that's right. You are. Here we are. And the energy of that was something that I was really feeling last night on the way to go pick up my kids from school and daycare with my husband. And I was like, today was a great day. And we don't have, and I got a lot done, but I didn't get everything done. And listen, spoiler alert, the lesson I'm still learning at 40, almost 41 is like, you can't get it all done. You can't have it all and you can't get it all done. And I think part of the magic of being at this age is that you can see very clearly the opportunity to like choose whether or not that's okay. You have to choose, or at least I have to choose. Because I was saying to my husband to go, like on the way to go pick up the kids, today was such a phenomenal day. There's so much shit I did not get done. And we have no spring sports tonight. And we can just like chill and kind of let the kids go crazy and eat outside. And let's pick up takeout from the berry farm. And like it was such a magical, gentle kind of feeling, except my inner narrative, my inner critic, my inner storyline that plays out that's like still persistent sometimes. Like you're not doing enough, you haven't accomplished enough, there's not enough that you got done today. Like I could hear her trying to like dial in to the group call. And I said that out loud to my husband, which was helpful. And he's like, oh my gosh, yeah, just relax. We're good. We're good. And sometimes we need that reminder because maybe this doesn't happen for you, but if you know this feeling of like being in your life, being in your flow, being in your work, having some deep part of you know, like, this is good. I'm doing enough. I am enough. I have enough. If you know that, but then you also have this like hum, this buzz of like, are you sure it's enough? Are you sure you should not be doing more? Are you sure you're not behind? Are you sure you shouldn't only sleep when you're done and hustle harder? Today's episode is for you. Today's episode is for me. Today's episode is for all of us. Today, I am talking to Lia Zneimer. I mean, Lia is such a wonderful, listen, we're not a monolith, but she is such a cool millennial to talk to because she was literally working at WeWork during that whole hustle harder era that so many of us lived and worked through, like really dug the grooves of our early to mid professional life in that kind of burnout stress culture. And it's a lot of what we're talking about on today's episode. Like that, how we deal with it, how we navigate it, how we notice it, and also how we begin to pay attention to the deeper pull of what we know, what we trust, what we love, and how we balance that with like our jobs, how we get paid, how we define success, how we spend our days. And she has such a cool perspective on this. She has so much experience navigating those two energies and both the world of like startup, hustle, tech, WeWork culture, and also like taking time off for a sabbatical, working on her own creative life and her own creative work. And she's done a lot of pivots in her professional life too. And I'm sure that there will be more, as have I. Aren't we all? So if any of that resonates, today's episode is it's for you. It's for me. It's for all of us. It's for all of us kind of still having those conversations again and again and again. And really wanting to feel like that's okay. Like that's okay. We're okay, babe. And today's episode has that energy. Plus, Leah's really funny. And I didn't know that about her, but she just had me cracking up at some of her deadpan stuff. So if you need to laugh, today is a good episode for you too. And I want to make shout out plug for the 40 Portal Book Club that's happening over on the paid tier of the Substack, substack.com/40portal. because the book that we talk about in today's episode is the last book that I did a little session on in the book club. The book club goes behind the paywall. There are no meetings. You don't even have to read the book. I read it for you. These are books that I've read a million billion times, and I basically give you the cliff notes so that you can take some of these ideas, put them in your pocket, take them for walks, meditate on them, journal on them, talk to your friends about them, like think and live your way into the concepts. So that's over on Substack. Join us there. And it's funny too, I'll give another plug because I have a small handful of coaching spots that are still available to start in September. Like, I'm not starting new clients in the summertime. That's like what I can say at 40. We'll start in September. We'll sharpen our pencils. We'll get down to business. When I work with women in my coaching practice, the point that Lia and I talk about in this episode, the point of burnout, the point of redefining ourselves in relationship to our nervous systems, our careers, our work in the world, our creativity, that is the point where I meet most, if not all, of my coaching clients. So if you get to the end of this episode today and you're like, I want to do this kind of work of nervous system regulation, deep introspection about like who I am, who I'm becoming, the stories I'm ready to let go of, and what it is I'm ready to pour myself into next. That's what I do with my women. So I'll link to the coaching application. You can find it here. We'll start in September. I think I have 3 spots left. Okay, enough of that. Let's dive into the episode. So we met in this like internet group. This like internet, that sounds so weird. An internet group of people who work independently and kind of have their own little businesses or medium businesses that they're building. And it's funny because you're probably the 3rd guest on the pod who I've met through that program. And it was just filled with so many smart, wonderful people. And that is when I love the internet as a place to meet and connect with smart, wonderful people that I probably otherwise wouldn't have connected with. And like, I don't think we would have met in real life, maybe, if that wasn't the way we connected. What do you think? Do you remember meeting?
I do. I distinctly remember being obsessed with your indie collective session. It was so calming and so peaceful. And you just have this way about you that was really grounding. And it was this aha moment. I think where I was in my career at that stage was just at the beginning of my independent practitioner journey. And I had come from a place of extreme burnout, and I was so drawn to your story and your background and the way you explained what you did. And I was like, oh, this person is just like magical. And I'm so lucky. I feel like the way that you and the work that you've done have just sort of been this through line for several years now. Because I think we both did Indie Collective in 2021, maybe?
2021.
Wild. It feels like yesterday, and also like, how's that 5 years ago? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense.
No, I know. Time has taken on a strange, fast quality, and also like almost like a time hoppy, like you're kind of hopping around through time. I feel like since the pandemic, and honestly, that was one of the reasons why I joined Indie Collective. I was like so craving interacting with other humans. And when you work independently, it can be kind of lonely, especially when the world is shut down and you can't like go to an event to meet people. But I don't know if it was the pandemic that did that to time, if that's how time always has been, or if it's just getting older. I don't know. It could be all of these things.
Totally, especially combined. I think about it too when people are like, the days are long, but the years are short. I'm like, oh, I think I'm at the age now where I get that. Like, that makes sense.
Totally.
It just is like a blink of an eye. I mean, we're recording this in May, which is wild. I'm like, how are we almost halfway through 2026? So
I have no answers for that.
Trip.
Like burnout, I guess I could tell a couple stories, but like the time, I don't know. Do that.
No clue. Couldn't tell you.
Oh my goodness.
But it's been such a treat to get to kind of follow you and all that you've done since that time 5 years ago. And I'm just really grateful that like we're able to have these conversations and keep in touch. And so much of what we're working on, I feel like overlaps in different ways. So it's really nice.
Totally. And that is, again, the continued magic of the internet. Because like I'll just see you pop up in my feed on Substack or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love what she's talking about there. And then we'll like ping each other. And then a couple more months will go by. And we'll be like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. So I'm happy that we're here today. This is the official catch up. This is the official hang. And
Yes. Thank you for
I
making it
know,
happen.
of course, I know who I'm talking to, but can you introduce yourself to our listeners? There's more than one.
Hi, Mom.
What is, hi, mom. Yeah. Hi, our moms. Okay. What is your name? What are your pronouns? But also go deeper into your name. Like, is there a story about your name? Is there something about the way you feel in your identity with your name? Tell
That
it
is
to
a
us.
fantastic question. No one has ever asked. I mean, they've asked me my name. They've not asked me like the story behind my name. So, hi, my name is Lia. Lia, which I always get a kick out of because when I was born, the story goes my parents weren't really set on a name for me. In the Jewish tradition, you typically name your kids with the first letter of someone who has passed away. And so my grandfather on my dad's side was Leonard, and so I got the L. And so my mom actually recently dug out a list, an index card of baby names that she'd been considering for me. And I was like, I didn't know you still had this. But the story goes that they couldn't decide, weren't really sure, and then they received a birthday card for me in the hospital from a friend, and she spelled my name Lia on the envelope, and they really loved it. And it's the Greek and Italian spelling, and my dad was very obsessed with Greece, and so that was a really nice fit. And so there it goes. And it actually means weary in Hebrew, which I find hilarious because I tend to be like a very tired person. And so I don't know how much of that is just my name and how much is this like nonstop go, go, go that so many of us are conditioned to like, incorporate into our lives. But here we are. I'm weary and I'm honestly like in my resting era now. I love how most people are like, their name means gift from God or like bright light. And I'm like, mine is tired. Mine is exhausted.
But doesn't that kind of track, Leah? Like, not that, and I would have never
to be burnt out.
That's I mean, listen, I don't know, but I do feel like we come here with something that is kind of like something cosmically written. And what a wild thing about your name, given the work that you're doing.
Yeah. My other fun fact, I don't know how fun it is. It's fun for me is that I never had I don't have a middle name. And so growing up, it was a big jealousy point with all of my friends who had middle names. And so my parents used to tell me that I could make up whatever middle name I wanted. And so if you go through the covers of my childhood books, everyone had a different middle name. So, and I was obsessed with like the characters from various shows and musicals. And so, there was a phase where I named my middle name every middle name from the cast of Annie. So like you'll open them and be like, why do you have all these orphan middle names? We're never calling you Lia Zneimer. But honestly, to this day, I'm like, okay, it's a blank slate. And I also love that because I feel like it gives me some room for creativity.
Do you feel like if you were to fill that blank slate with a name today, is there anything that comes to mind?
I've actually toyed around with it. So I got married in 2024. And I have a complicated relationship with the idea of changing my last name, as I'm sure so many women do. And at this point in my life, I'm like, I've been who I am for almost 40 years. Like, I don't know that feels like a craving or a calling or a need to like reinvent myself in that way. We also, I don't know, I'm sort of, not that I'm like well known by any means, but I've had like a 15, 20-year career with my current name. And then that brings in the whole layer of, work and identity and all of that fun stuff. So it's a messy little tangle. But one of the ideas I was playing around with is like, what if I took my husband's last name as my middle name so that I could officially have a middle name and a middle initial? So I did test it out on an LL Bean tote bag just to like, see what it looks like. But I haven't filed any paperwork or anything yet. So
what would your initials be if you added that as your middle name?
LKZ.
LKZ, that's
Which is
good.
funny because growing up, one of the middle names that I chose that stuck was Kate. I used to
There you
lie and
go.
say that it was so it wouldn't even need to be a lie anymore. It could have been a very, long stretch of manifestation.
Maybe that's the subtitle for your next essay or something. It's like a long stretch of manifestation. As I'm like sitting here staring at your name, I'm like, oh, that's right. We're both Z's, which is an interesting thing to have a Z as your last name. And my initials are CHZ. And so my LL Bean tote says CHZ, but that also, when you say it, it's cheese. And I'm like, that tracks.
That's the best. I'm so jealous. I love that. My sister-in-law got me a little tote bag that has my name in cursive, which is so cute. But when you look at the cursive quickly, it looks like lice instead of Leah. And so we've just started calling it the lice bag. Like we use it as like a bag for our dog to take some of his supplies around. But anyway, it's just, I'm jealous of the cheese. I'd rather be cheese than lice.
Oh my God. I love where this conversation is going. So
To anyone listening, please grab your snack.
Welcome. Welcome to the portal we're in. Okay, so how would you introduce yourself if job titles, accomplishments, and labels, all those things that probably like lead to burnout, weren't part of your answer at first?
So honestly, I don't even know if I know how to define myself without my work, which is so sad, but also deeply conditioned. And like, here we are. So may as well be honest about it. But I would say I am a woman in my late 30s, even though I like to keep calling it my mid 30s, but I'm like almost 39. That's probably close enough to my late 30s. I should say late.
39 and a half, you'll be like, I have entered my late 30s.
Yeah, right. I'm almost late 30s. But no, so a woman in my late 30s, really exploring what it means to find fulfillment in this chapter of life through a mix of creative pursuits and nervous system regulation, and doing so with a lot of support from our loved ones. I don't know at what point I just switched to the third person, but
it's all your little orphan Annie middle name.
Just telling stories all the time. But, outside of like the professional connection, like I do think who I am and who I've always been since I was little, in case you couldn't tell, is really like a storyteller, and I've had a wild imagination, but also like a desire to categorize and organize and make sense of the world around me in a certain way. And I think for me, whether or not writing is part of my job, it's very much just part of my identity and who I am. And I think like how I try to make sense of things and connect with other people is primarily through the written word. So I do think, that's important to me. I'm also a dog mom to Waffles, who's our miniature poodle, who's really cute and really a handful. And a wife and a sister and a daughter. And I think those all play into my identity as well, for better or worse.
When you describe the like who you've always been as like a little girl, like a child in this storytelling writing way, and now you are in that, you're in that through line right now, was there a moment when you stepped off, like away from that through line in your teens, 20s, earlier mid 30s?
Yeah, a little bit, yes and no. So I think growing up in Colorado, I'm so lucky that we grew up without the internet for the most part. I mean, we had dial-up, but it was, a big production and an ordeal, and one person logged onto the internet at a time, and that was so special for giving our brains just creative freedom and reign. And I was a super avid reader. I still am, like lived in books, and would just spend hours creative writing, both in journals, but also like on the computer. And like the fact that we had this one computer in our my mom's office. I would just go and camp out for hours. I used to write poetry about like every color Crayola in the crayon box and just like endlessly creative in that way. I think newsletters that were like family newsletters that no one asked for or wanted or probably read, but like it's like, here's the Zneimer family post, and it was just full of like ridiculous updates from our neighborhood about like our neighbor's pet bird dying. Like, I don't know who my target audience is, but they need to know. Anyway, so I'd say like that was a through line, and also theater and performing was a huge, huge part of my childhood, my identity, my creative outlet, and that was my version of a team sport. So I think those two things honestly have stayed consistent throughout my entire life. When I graduated from college, I thought I wanted to be an actor, and I pursued that path a little bit, auditioning professionally in New York. I did study theater, but also English, double majored. My parents, I think, especially my dad was not in favor of me getting a BFA and going the creative route. So I think there was like a moment in my early 20s, probably, when I would have liked to have kept on that path to an extent, but also felt this pressure to, quote, get a real job and like be in business and be working and be making an income. And I think, there were ways I was still able to incorporate that creativity into my day job. I worked in corporate communications at Scholastic, and I loved so much about that. It was a blend of like reading, writing, my love of children's books and school and teaching. And it was an amazing chapter, but it was not the same as like pursuing my own writing. And I remember I got promoted to writer and editor for internal communications and social media. And the minute I had the word writer and editor in my title, I was like, there's this click of relief where I was like, this feels right. This feels good. And then I like veered off that path again for a long time, working in social media and marketing. And that never felt comfortable, but like it utilized that skill. So I'd say like I did veer from it on paper, but at the core of things, I was still pursuing what I left on the side. But I do think there's something really special about kind of coming home to myself, and after this like long chapter in marketing, growing and scaling teams at like fast hypergrowth companies and then early stage startups, just taking a beat, taking a breath, actually working on this children's book that I've been working on since 2013 that's still not done, but I have like the young adult novel. But I'm, so grateful to my husband and my family for supporting me literally so that I could work on it for 2 years. Between that and then writing on Substack, like that has just felt more me than anything I've ever done corporate-wise.
There's so many things I want to pull the thread on, but like also just that image of like being in like front of the family computer, and like we're totally the era, like this, like very tight, like, because you and I, it sounds like we're like 2 years apart. Yeah, 2 years apart, almost 2 years, whatever. It's like we were math. We were there, like, and putting our stories on like early internet too. Like, I mean, I remember, I don't know if I had a live journal, but my high school boyfriend had one, and like, or like a MySpace, and then it's just, of course, like we've evolved into like one of us created Substack. I don't know, I'm guessing the founder of that is like has a similar story, but it's like here we are kind of doing those things that we had always done. But I'm curious, like, was the marketing that era, was that the burnout era then? And also I want to come back to the young adult novel, and like the fact that you've been working on something for 13 years is incredible, Lia, because listen, we live in an era where it seems like things should happen instantly, and like real creative work, especially when done alongside other things like other careers, family stuff, like it just takes so long.
It's, a labor of love for sure. And I wrote a piece about this, about like stopping treating my book like a KPI, because I'm so hard on myself about not being done yet and like expecting myself to be done by now. And it's like, well, it was, to be fair, like, and I don't need an excuse, but here's my excuse. But like, I did start it in 2013 and then I didn't look at it for 10 years. Like, I really didn't touch it until after I left my most recent corporate job. And I'd say to your original question about burnout, I had sort of like two distinct burnout experiences that were related, but quite different. Um, and I don't know, the first one was not necessarily due to marketing per se. I also think it's just like a broader cultural issue, and I absorbed so much of it as like a personal failing, where I was like, "Oh, I'm falling short because I can't handle this amount of pressure." But like as a society, we're just there are a lot of bigger fish to fry that are not individual problems as much as they are systemic issues. So, the first bout of burnout was after my tenure at WeWork. I was there for a little over 5 years, and it was right during the lead up to the failed IPO and then the chaos that came in the aftermath, and then COVID, which was right on the heels of that. And I was running a global team at that point, and I was spread so thin across so many different things. I'd known I probably wanted to leave around my 5-year anniversary anyway. So, and my boss knew that. It was sort of like on the horizon, but then COVID sort of escalated my timeline. Um, and I just was so tired. It was more of like just the sheer volume and scale and pace, and I just was like exhausted. So that was sort of burnout story number one. I'm really grateful I was able to take some time in between that and then my next opportunity to just like regroup was that time that I moved to Colorado, found just like a lot of peace in this new start for myself. It was a really special time. And then this second most recent bout of burnout was I was running the marketing team at an early stage startup. And I think that I came into that opportunity right off the heels of having been freelancing and working independently for about a year or so. And so one of my goals for myself at that time was to really like maintain a lot of the boundaries that I had set with my independent work, to be like, I am in control of my schedule. I am in control of my time. I am going to be in the driver's seat. And it very quickly, I felt myself fall back into old habits in terms of like being very reactive, being online 24/7, craving my manager, who's our CEO, his approval. And I felt like what I was doing was not good enough. And I felt like from a very early one-on-one, I remember him telling me like, yeah, I kind of thought our progress would be faster by now. And I took that as like a personal failure. And I like doubled down into action mode and, working harder. So you can outwork anything if you try hard enough, right? Like, spoiler alert, no, you cannot. So I really like leaned extra fully into work. And I think I already at that point was not feeling super confident about, there was a lot of imposter syndrome in place. I started off as the head of brand and content, which was not a role I held before. And I had come from a social media background. So it was adjacent, but not direct. And I think the combination of like reporting into a CEO for the first time and being on the leadership team, being at that level, but also being an individual contributor and just feeling like I was going a million miles an hour with no real set sense of like strategy or direction, and things kind of ever changing because we were an early stage startup. Understandably, like shift in direction and strategy is like completely normal, but it was a lot and it was intense. So I think that coupled with just sort of the alchemy of like how I operated in that context with that team at that time of my life, it just was like a perfect storm for burnout. And I was working all the time and it just wasn't healthy. And I think my body knew before I knew, which is, easier to say in hindsight. But I always use the analogy, like if someone came to me and said, you've been doing high impact exercise for 20 years and you have to switch to low impact or else you're going to completely destroy your knees, I'd be like, oh my gosh, okay, yes, sign me up for yoga. I'll stop with the high impact. But when it comes to my career, I'm so quick to be like, no, 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 I don't need low impact. I can keep doing high impact. I'll keep going. I can push through. I can, but like, why and for what? And I was just having these like anxiety attacks. I would call my sister or my husband crying from a phone booth at a WeWork multiple times a week, just like couldn't eat, like just, constantly trying to like tap into a meditation practice and a medication practice. Both. Freudian slip, but also my therapist was so great. I switched therapists, which was hugely helpful. Like finding someone who's the right fit for you makes the world. I was working with someone that I just like, it wasn't working. So broke up with my therapist, found a new one. She did adjust my medication. So I had medication and meditation. Um, Perfect combo. But it was honest, it was such a journey. And at that time too, we were planning our wedding. We were planning a move from Southern California to Northern California. And I was like, there was one Saturday where I remember I was trying on my wedding dress and I was getting texts from the CEO about our latest influencer campaign not converting. And I was like, I don't want to be walking down the aisle in July thinking about our KPIs and like these huge growth goals that are on my shoulders. I just can't do it anymore. And it was really scary, but I was like, I knew I had to make a change. So ended up giving notice. And the plan was initially to start, you know, thinking about what was next, probably within a few months, but really needed the time and space. My family was incredibly supportive and financially supportive. I don't want to pretend like it was easy. Like it's such a gift and a privilege to be able to be like, yep, I'm just going to take a beat. Like, not, I know not everyone has that chance. And so, I don't mean to make light of it. Like, I really am so grateful for it. But it was at that point that Ben, my husband, was like, why don't you've always wanted to write. You've always wanted to be a writer. Like, what happened to that book you were writing? Why don't you pull it out and just like take another look? And I did. And had some really great encouragement. Our landlord back in LA, we are living in the guest house, like a family friend's guest house. And she is a screenwriter and just like a wonderful human. And she read an early draft and was like, why are you doing marketing? Like, this is what you should be doing. Like, this is me pushing the golden buzzer for you on The Voice. Like, you need to be working on this book. And it was just like the most wonderful validation that I could have asked for at a time when I think I needed it the most. And that was like the encouragement I needed to basically like gut the first 50,000 words and I mean, rewrite, didn't totally start over, but that to me was just like honestly the best gift.
Where is the novel now?
So one of the things I'm working on doing is reframing my answer to that because my tendency is to lean into like, it's not very, it's not far along. I have so much more to go. And it's like how you talk about it is how you perceive it and how you are selling it. So I'd say it's coming along slowly but surely. I actually just took a virtual writing course out of a literary agency in the UK, and I loved it. A friend recommended it to me. And that helped me with, I was having some severe writer's block with a couple of different parts that were just like, I'd sit there being like, I don't even know. I can't even write bad content and just like move it out of the way because I know it just feels like a waste. So anyway, that helped unlock a few key puzzle pieces that were like super helpful. So now I feel like I'm a little more back on track in terms of writing. That said, right as I was starting to kind of feel in the groove again, I ended up taking on a maternity leave cover for someone who was going out on leave. And so the past couple of weeks, I've been sort of acclimating, getting back into a flow of what it means to be working a more traditional 9 to 5, but also carving out pockets of time to write, both for Substack and the book. So it's going to be a journey. I'm like figuring out what that looks like, but I'm not giving up. I know it's been 13 years, but this book I feel like has potential and I'm not tired of it. So
she's not weary, people.
I'm not weary. I maybe do need to change my name. Not weary.
I mean, isn't that interesting? Like the shit that tires us can sometimes be shit that we love, but often it's like a sign of like, oh, maybe this isn't what I need to be pouring my precious life into. Like the idea of like the influencer campaign not landing while you're trying on your wedding dress. You're like, listen, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
No, I just like, and it sounds, I think I knew the burnout was especially real when I was like, I just don't care. Like, I don't care about any of this. And usually, like, throughout the course of my career, I've been able to kind of like talk myself into something somehow. I'll be like, oh, well, okay, you're tired of this thing, but like, what if you lean into learning more about leadership? Or what if you lean into like learning more about international strategy or about, whatever the thing may be, SEO. But this time around, it was like, I don't know, maybe it's also like the state of the world and like collective exhaustion, but I'm like, none of this shit matters. Like, what matters is life, and work is like one piece of the life pie. It's not the whole thing. And I'm so tired of it being literally like 95% of my pie. So that's been the mission this last like 2 years, is like reallocating the pieces.
I feel like so many of us are on that path. And I feel like one of the most heartening things about your storytelling around these two experiences of burnout is like, and I feel like you've probably heard me say this, like, because I think I probably said it in that session. It's like, it's not, we don't figure this stuff out once and then we're good for life. Like, it is constantly going to keep cycling back around because we are participating in our life. And you can build up like a really good toolkit. You can build up your capacity and your ability to notice things earlier on. But like, I've definitely experienced like small, like low level burnout at points in the last few years too. But it's like, and I always say, yeah, because there's so many of them at once. And it's like, and so I always tell my clients, I'm like, it's not that I will never get burnout again, or I'm never like edging toward it, but it's like, I can see it more quickly, but not all the time, man. Like sometimes I've like, because sometimes it's like it's not the big thing that's burning you out, but it's like a smaller kind of hum throughout your life that's happening, and it's not even the obvious one. And then you're like, you can get, I think this is my 40 portal experience of burnout, is like, it can be something that on the surface is a much smaller piece of your pie, but if it is not the correct thing, it can eventually, it's like a repetitive use injury where you're like, oh, I'm always, whatever, I'm always lifting my baby this way. And then you have a shoulder thing and nothing happened. It's just this low level hum that can then like really exhaust you.
100%. The sort of like death by 1,000 paper cuts kind of situation where it's just, yeah, tiny little movements. But I think it's so interesting too that like we assume, or as a culture, we're taught that, do what you love, then you'll never work a day in your life. And that was literally WeWork's slogan, was do what you love.
I know! You're like, so millennial. You're so millennial.
I am so millennial. It's also like, hustle harder. Like, no. I think, was it Ali Wong who was like, I don't want to lean in, I want to lie down. Like, we're all just tired.
We were fed a lot of bullshit in that era.
So much. So much.
But what were you saying?
Era.
Sorry, I cut you off. You were saying something brilliant.
Oh, no, it was definitely not brilliant. It was just like these little tiny things that even if we think we love them, like everything in moderation. But also I think do what you love in that way is like not great advice. Like you can, I don't know, it's separate from the burnout situation, but just in general, it's like, I don't know. These days, success just like looks very different. And I don't know that like doing what I love professionally is the thing that makes me feel fulfilled. Like they say, do what you love. And I've realized a lot over the past year, I don't want to write. Like, I don't want to be an in-house writer I don't want to be a copywriter. I don't want to write been doing some like ghost writing, which I don't mind, but like, I don't want that to be my forever career. Or like, I don't want to be I don't know, long form, freelance, B2B, SaaS writer. Like when I want to write, it's for my own projects and my own priorities and my own creative outputs. That's what I want to be writing. So like, okay, can I find something else that like that I can do to make money that doesn't use up all of that creative energy so that I still have enough gas in the tank left for myself at the end of the day.
I think too, like this is like where capitalism has gotten us. Like I was on the podcast for Indie Collective a bunch of years ago. I don't even know if they still have it, and it was like, what's your favorite business book? And the book that I always recommend in that scenario is a book called, is it right here?
Look, is this a convenient prop?
It's
Oh,
called Let Your Life Speak, Listening for the
ooh,
Voice of Vocation by
I'm
Parker
writing this
Palmer.
down.
And it has nothing to do with business. It actually has to do with the other piece of it. And when I train people to become yoga teachers, which is a part of what I've done over the last 12 years, I train other teachers to become teachers. And I always make this distinction for them, which is, you have the vocation of teaching, which is like the calling, like that is the craft, the vocation of writing, right? That is the craft. That is the part where it can fulfill the phrase of like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Like when you're in that zone, it's like, that is something different. But then because we do live in, late stage capitalism in America in 2026, there's also the business of the thing too, if you are right. And they're separate. And sometimes you're doing both at the same time for sure. But I have found in the last 12 years of working for myself that I have to understand, am I caring about the craft of the work that I do right now? Am I trying to become a better writer? Am I trying to become a more insightful listener and storyteller? Am I trying to like step into a new level of my teaching and embodiment? That's this. Or am I trying to figure out a business plan for the 40 portal? That's this. Like these are two separate ways, like they're two different hats I have to put on. There's certainly two different energetic qualities. And I think that my burnout in this era of my life has come when perhaps the like business side of things wasn't quite the right fit. Or Leah, when I wasn't actually like doing the deep work undergirding the vocational development. And so I was just like banging up against this wall of limitation in my own growth and development that then like just I had to burn through it or I was going to burn out.
That's so interesting. Are there things that you find have helped you to push or break through it or burn through it or
Well,
navigate it?
listening to my body, which I've ignored too, like in the recent past, where I was like carrying around a situation or I was in I was like, God, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. But I was really explaining it away to myself. And now I can see, like, if I had listened actually to the like what my gut knew, I would have not gotten myself as deep into this situation. But there's also the thing that like, and this is becoming a theme too on this podcast, is like, you don't just get all easy, smooth lessons. Like you don't just sit down to write your novel and it pops out in one like first draft.
Yeah.
Like,
Why did I think it would? Like, I don't know. I thought it was like, I'm going to put in the exact same amount of hours that I put in at a high pressure, like startup role, and I'm just going to crank and it's going to be done. And it's like, no, it's not how life works. It's not how creativity works.
it's not how so much of life works. Okay, I'm gonna pivot us a little bit into the questions. Will you tell us how old you are? Because I'm doing the math in my head, but that's part one. And then how old do you feel?
Ooh, excellent question. I am 38. I'll be 39 at the end of June. So depending on when folks are listening to this.
Probably right around this. So this will probably
I'm
come out right
either
around
38 or 39. And if you're listening to this years in the future, I'm forever young. No, I feel it's such an interesting question. I probably feel 32. Like I feel like I have enough shit figured out from my 20s where I'm like, I have a really solid understanding of who I am and what my needs are. And I'm trying to be done, constantly catering to everyone else. That said, I'm like kind of a forever people pleaser, so I'm working on it. But I still feel like I have so much of my 30s ahead of me to like grow and explore and potentially start a family. And like I have this my husband and I joke a lot about these like different paths we could see ourselves living in different places in life. And so I'm like, well, yeah, we could pick up and move to London and figure out work and blah, blah. And it's like, well, you could, but also, I don't know. It's all a trade off at some point. But I think in my head, I think I have like almost a full decade of being in my 30s ahead of me to like live out these plans. That said, sometimes my knees feel like I'm like in my 80s. I'm not going to lie. I have really bad knees.
Are you doing too much high impact, Leah?
It's, a fair question, but I went to actually an acupuncturist who told me it's not a knee problem. I've always thought I had a knee problem. He said it's a stomach problem and that I'm eating too much sugar. And so I do find that like when I drink or have dessert, which is probably more than I should admit, but like my knees feel it. It's wild. I'm like, inflammation is real, I think. So but no high impact. Actually, I'm over that chapter.
Cool. Okay. What is one narrative, one script that you were given about a woman who is your age? Let's call it 39. And does that map onto your life? Like when you were at some earlier point in your life, like what did you think about a woman in her approaching her late 30s?
I think so much of what I thought I knew was based on the media and what it told us. And that combination of, if you look back at movies from the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, like a woman in her late 30s is like practically geriatric. Like it sounded old. It felt old. Magazine culture did not like embrace aging. It was all about youth. There was no like anything above 35 just was sort of like this bucket of old, which is in hindsight hilarious because I'm like, no, this is when things like just start to get good. I mean, not that they can't be good younger, but I dug up actually for a piece I was writing on Substack, I dug up the interview that I gave my local hometown paper when I was 18 for like a graduation segment they did on seniors. And one of the questions is like, where will you be by age 30? What will you have done? And just the amount of things I thought I would have done by the time I was 30 is adorable and also like exhausting. And I'm like, it's really sweet that I thought all of that. And I love that I believed in myself, but it was like, you'll have graduated from Penn, you'll have gotten your master's, you'll have traveled the world, you'll have found the love of your life, you'll have 2 kids, you'll be like successful in your career. And I'm like, oh girl. Where do we start? But I think there's something really ambitious about where I thought I'd be by my late 30s, but I'm actually like totally okay with not being where I thought I'd be in that sense.
I love that we were raised on us, like there was something in the water too of this like high achievement era that we were brought up in. And that totally tracks. One of the questions I sometimes ask is like, what were you supposed to have done by now? But you just gave us a few examples of what you were supposed to have done by 30.
Yeah, I don't think those supposed to's though, like maybe they came from society. I also think like I put a lot of pressure on myself. I've always been my own harshest critic. Like I don't think my parents put any pressure on me to like go to grad school, or they've never pressured me to have kids. They've never like there's not been that sense of like, this is what you should be doing and you're not meeting the bar. I think it's all just internalized from experience,
And so funny. And I feel like one of the things I'm discovering on this side of 40 is like a freedom that comes with like letting some of that shit go. Not like my ambition, but that's something. I think it was my 38th birthday. I gave up ambition for my 38th birthday. And what I meant Yeah. And what I meant was, and that was like the year that we opened our little studio. So that sounded like a dumb idea from a business perspective. But what I meant was like, to me, ambition, like the shadow side of it is really like never being able to be where I am and appreciate where I am and recognize where I am. And I just was starting to feel so sick of that shit. And I realized I was missing a lot of what was right in front of me by always looking to what's next. And I think I planted that seed on my 38th birthday. And as I'm approaching my 41st birthday now, I'm like, oh, I feel like it's starting to sprout. Like, I feel like there's a little sprout and like roots are starting to grow. But it's also funny too, like the freedom on this side of 40. I was standing in my backyard last night. We had friends over for dinner. They have kids, my kids' ages. And my friend Sarah, I think she turns 45 this summer. And we were talking about some different house projects we have going on. And we both came to the idea that we wanted new glasses, like glasses, because we both realized, like, look at this, we still just have like a bunch of like mismatched mason jars as like our glasses. And we're both like, we would like some water glasses that match a full set. And it's just, and we were literally like, we're in our gosh darn 40s now. Like, we could get the glasses that match. And I don't know, it's just funny. It's like it's like a different flavor of that. What we pursue, what really is meaning, and like where we thought we would be. But I am going to get some matching water glasses.
Honestly, I do love the mason jars though. They're great. They're great.
I'm over it. I'm leaving those in my, I'm gonna, yeah. I'll
Okay,
send
in that
the
case,
update.
I will say I love the Crate and Barrel glasses. So just in case you are, they're really
Good note there. Okay. What is one thing that your 10 years ago self, so 28 turning 29, would be really surprised to learn about you today?
that I walked away from a VP of marketing role willingly by choice. I don't think she would have seen that one coming at all. I think I've always been a little bit driven by what looks good on paper, for better or for worse. Like, I wish I could say it doesn't matter to me, but I think it does. And so I think there was that taste of like having recognizable names on my resume. And I think my 28-year-old self would not imagine that, like, I just don't care about that anymore. Like, I think she'd be shocked. I think she'd also be really shocked that we eat beets now.
Beets?
Yeah,
I don't
they're
like beets. Tell me how you got into beets.
not like religiously. Like, they're not like a daily household staple, but like I used to hate them. But like now I'm kind of into like golden roasted beets as like a side dish sometimes. So yeah,
I
palates change.
Golden over red beets for sure.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. But it's not like, I actually did write a piece on the advice I would give my younger self. It was like, if I had coffee with my younger self. There was a trend making the rounds on TikTok.
And what'd you say?
And Instagram. So it was actually a poem. But essentially the whole premise followed the template that this creator, whose name I'm totally blanking on, so apologies. But my memory as I approach 40 is also not what it used to be. But yeah, it was essentially like if you were to sit down and have coffee with your younger self, like what would that conversation look like? And so sort of the parallels just between how precise and disciplined and hard on myself I was in my early 20s. Not that I'm not still hard on myself, but it's definitely softened as I've gotten older. I mean, just even little things like, iced coffee black. I used to always drink it black to avoid the extra calories. Now I'm like, I like a nice latte. It'll be like non-fat milk, but like I'd rather enjoy it than like suffer through plain black cold brew. So I think there were a lot of those little things. Also having, being more appreciative in the moment for time with loved ones when you have it, like just ultimately like family and health being really the things that matter most at the end of the day, at least to me. And wishing my younger self would have known that, and just thinking about like what I might have done differently. So But yeah, I think I don't know, I would like to think younger self would be also like proud of where we are now, not just surprised.
Yeah, I love that. This is like it dovetails into the last question I'll ask from the little lineup of 40 portal questions. So what is, and you've already talked about it a little bit, what is it that you're learning to care less about as you get older, or maybe that you're softening around? Like you kind of used that.
I don't know if I'm learning. I don't know how or where I would have like learned this other than through just realizing I intrinsically like don't care about it as much, but really is corporate titles and like job titles. I just like, I have no interest in this moment in time in like climbing a corporate ladder. I think my interest in building a fulfilling career looks a lot more like the web analogy or the portfolio analogy or something that's like more integrated, more holistic, more like relationship based and not title based. Just sort of letting go of some of these like rules I had for myself around like you must adhere to XYZ in order to be successful. And I keep talking lately about like how I'm optimizing for success these days by having a regulated nervous system. And I don't know that that ever would have like dawned on me in my 20s or 30s. Maybe, but I just like, no, I don't, yeah. Who knows? Hard to say. But I think learning to let go of those sorts of clear, like black and white definitions of what growth or success look like, and just like really embracing the like stages of gray, shades of gray, all 50 of them. No, I have no idea. I've actually never read the book.
I read it.
I wish people could see your face right now as you say that.
But actually, the memory I had is that, like, I think I saw it, like, my mother also read it. And I remember it being, like, horrified by that concept. Because that book probably came out 15 years ago or something. And I, like, couldn't conceive of my mother reading something like that then. But now I'm like, now that I'm 40, I'm like, oh, man, like, God, we're all just people. Okay, so this is my 40 portal wisdom for you. I'm going to read you a couple lines. This is a long one, so I don't know how far I'll get into it. But this comes from a woman who I love dearly, and she was, I guess had just turned 41 when she wrote this. And she said, "Welcome to the fourth decade. I, for one, am loving giving so many less fucks. What I know and trust is that I am so much more magical than I had ever realized. I don't know what age in my late 30s, maybe 38, 39, I really felt it and didn't shy away. But it was like the weight of other people's and society's expectations just fell away once I became 40. I know 40 is not old. It is an honor. I feel so lucky to not be scared of who I am anymore. It's okay if I am not right all the time. It's okay if I fall down. It's okay if I want something different than what I was fed as a child." And then the okays changed to sureness in what I actually want from myself and therefore life. I don't pretend to know all the okays that will change into sureness, but I do know as I walk into each next year, there will be more things I know in my soul that started with just okays, and I finally trust that I can handle it all.
That is gorgeous. I'm like tearing up over here. Definitely got me emotional. That is beautiful.
It's wild because I didn't actually know how old you were before going into this conversation. And so I picked out this thing to read to you, but I didn't know how old you were. But she says like maybe 38, 39, I really felt it. And like that's exactly the cuspy place where you are. Yeah. There's been a lot of synchronicities in the pieces that I've chosen to like ended up happening in these interviews. But I will say too, Leah, like exactly the place that you are now, literally, or I guess in like 3 weeks. It was because it was 1 month before my 39th birthday. And I was at my friend Kate's 39th birthday, and her husband had just turned 40. And, we've been friends for a long time. And I asked him how that felt. And he said he felt like a newborn. He felt like 39 is like 9, like being at the top of a decade, and then like you get to start over at 0 again. And then Kate had this like very witchy like gathering. And then I just remember leaving that night. And I wasn't like saying, oh, this is the 40 portal. But from that moment, 1 month before my 39th birthday, started this portal work, which now I know that that's what it was, of reflecting so deeply on my 30s and what it was that I had done or not done, what had happened, what was still in process. Like I really wanted to get that kind of like like not postmortem, but like just looking back and really
like
integrating
retro.
retro. Yes, like a retro, but not a KPI. And then I was like, oh, I just knew I also had to get very clear as to how I wanted to step into my 40s. So you're like, maybe you're in the portal, maybe you won't have a portal, but you could also be like 3 weeks away from your portal opening too.
I'm so excited. I feel like I'm Harry Potter, like awaiting my Hogwarts letter. Except it's a
Mm-hmm.
portal.
It's a portal, babe.
What advice would you, now knowing what you know, give to someone who's like about to step into the portal? Buckle up.
Well, buckle up. I've literally been saying this, like that has been my mantra the last few weeks. I'm like, buckle up. Because you know what? At first it was very sexy and spicy and like really cool and fun to be like, to do this kind of like deep inner work at this threshold moment. And like one of the things I would say pay attention and look at it all. Because it's not like, oh, you'll get all the pieces and then they'll fit together, but there's so many more breadcrumbs than perhaps you have noticed if you haven't been looking for them. And like one of the breadcrumbs I realized was like, I was trying to remember how I had spent my 30th birthday. Like, what was I actually doing that day? And then I remembered that I got engaged on my 30th birthday, which if you had told my 20-something self who was dying to get married, that I would have forgotten that I got engaged on my 30th birthday, she would have been like, you crazy. But so then I realized, oh my God, my 30s for me were so much born out of that decision, that question and that answer, because it was so much of my 30s was building my marriage and building my family. And I was like, then I became very like auspicious around like, well, how do I want to spend my 40th birthday? And so I spent a lot of time that whole year doing both this reflection work and this like, what seeds do I want to plant in the decade ahead? So I would say get curious about that too. And then also be careful what you put there, because I'm like, this is such a sexy thing, this 40 Portal podcast. I'm so excited. And then also I've recently come out of an experience where it was like, oh, that was part of my deep portal reckoning. And like a portal can also feel like you're stuck in the spin cycle on the washing machine, or you've gotten caught in like a riptide and you're getting fucking pummeled and beaten and bruised and bloodied and like rocks shattered at you. And then if you come out the other side, yeah. And it's just like, you're just like, that gasp though on the other side of like free air to breathe is like, there's so much more oxygen. If you can stay in the portal, whatever it is, like, and get a little bloody, like you will come out transformed. And so I just think it is potent, it is real, and there's nothing sexier at the other side than to be like a little like bloody and bruised and beaten. That's why like we're like surfers. Yeah, man. That's like, So that's what I would say, I guess. But no one's asked me that.
Excellent advice. No, it's such good advice. It's so cool to hear from someone who's like been through it recently.
But still in it.
And still in it. But still like that, like, I don't know, in my mind, it's like I'm visualizing it as like stepping over a threshold.
It is.
And I'm like, doesn't have to be exactly 40, but like I can feel there's like a shift. I also think the other thing I've noticed, and this is a little bit of a sidebar, but like I can't handle overstimulation the way that I used to be able to. And I don't know if that's something that's just like happening as I'm getting older, but like I need more quiet and more space to like process my thoughts and just be. And I used to be able to like multitask to podcast and music. There's a show in the background at all times. Like I remember my mom saying to me once, like, I'm worried that you never give your brain time to rest. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm good. And I'm like, I'm not good. Like, no, it's definitely like a big transition for me in that sense.
Then I will add this advice to my answer. I will say, yes, let your brain breathe. One of my like deepest tools of self-care in like nervous system regulation, and also like for my creativity and for my becomingness, is like my favorite thing in the whole world to do, which is not do, is to putter and ponder. Like just walk through my house or my yard and just let my brain breathe. Another place that happens for me is like being in a car driving by myself for like even 30 minutes. Like that can do it on like a good road. So I think check out that silence too in the next bit of time. You're going to hear a lot from yourself in it, I think.
I love that. Thank you.
And I think you'll have to come back in 2 years if the podcast is still going and be like, here's what did you call it? A retro? But no KPIs.
Corporate, but you can't take the corporate out of a girl.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Lia. That was fabulous.
Thank you. This was so fun.
What a good hang. What a fun chat. I hope that you found a deep exhale, that you laughed a little bit, that maybe you saw something about yourself or the moment you're in right now. And if the kind of conversation that I had with Lia today about like career pivots, burnout, nervous system regulation, if you are having those creativity, if you are having those types of conversations with other women in your life, will you please share this episode with one of them? That's how the podcast grows. Please, please, please. If this resonated with you and you have someone who it also might resonate with, pass it along, babe, pass it along. And while you're at it, leave a 5-star rating and review, because that just helps other women find the podcast too. And as our conversations around these topics that can really change the quality of our lives on the day-to-day and overall, as we keep having those conversations and widen the circle of women having the conversations with us, like that's how we change not only our own life, but the world around us. And let's go. Isn't it time for that? Okay. I'll see you right back here next time. Check us out. I'm hitting leaves above my head right now. Check us out on the 40 portal over on Substack. The book club is there if you'd like to join us. We talk about Let Your Life Speak in one of the recent sessions of the book club. And if you're interested in doing this work with me, check out 40portal.com/coaching and you can find my coaching application there. Okay. See you back here next time.